A full month has been passed after the incident of the double dungeon. Miss Song walks around the city, seemingly as he's deep in thought, remembering the encounter and how he awakened. He's been holding his master with the sword for years, yet he awakens as a mage, something that really disturbs him within. As he continues to walk and think about it, he eventually spots someone. Of course, he's confused and asks who it was. But eventually, after he realizes, he was shocked and even surprised. Of course, I was also surprised to see him. And I asked if this was a song. And of course, he smiled and was even impressed that I actually changed so much. And I've actually even grown as well. It was actually surprising for him to even see me like this. I was actually much more taller and even much more mature than I looked before. Of course, I just smiled at him. Of course, he was also confused why I actually had my leg back, since I actually had cut it off slightly. Though I did explain that after I woke up in the hospital, it was fully back to normal. Of course, he was surprised and eventually laughed it off, saying that he was glad that I was okay, since younger people like me need to stay in top shape so they can continue to be hunters and help out their families. Of course, I would just glance at his once ripped out arm, with me just staying silent, as I remembered that I couldn't do anything. With my strength that was surpassing the original jinwoo that timeline back in the double dungeon incident, I could have not even helped them. I felt useless, but eventually he snapped me out of my thoughts and eventually told me that it was a miracle for him to not actually get injured after so long of being a hunter. Of course, I would just sigh and then nod reluctantly. I wish I could have had the elixir of life with me so I can help him heal his arm, but I know that he'll most likely retire sooner or later after this one raid, so I will just move on with it, I guess. Of course, eventually both of us will look as we realize that the other members of the party will also be there, as I will then spot Juhi. Of course, she'll be surprised to actually see me, with me just having a gentle smile as I see her. And I'll actually apologize to her for being so late. Of course, she tells me that it's okay. Of course, she's also surprised that I was actually much more different than before. Even grown taller, alongside every injury that I had before when we were in the double dungeon has completely disappeared. Of course, I'll smile at her gently and tell her that, yeah, everything is fine. Eventually, I will tell her that I want to tell her something after the raid if she's okay with that. Of course, she nods and tells me that it's all fine. But of course, we get interrupted as we saw a few criminals. I knew that they were actually ex-hunters back in the day, which committed crimes against some humans. Of course, I'll grit my teeth, but I'll remain calm. Of course, even Mr. Song and Juhi will also be disturbed, with me, of course, having a calm glance. Though deep inside, I want to kill them myself, but I know that the job will already be done by none other than the B rank hunter that will be with us. Of course, as we enter the gate, Mr. Song also glanced at me, as he could feel the difference between what I was before. He can sense that my mana is actually increased, alongside my strength. He can tell. Because of him being a mage, he can tell the difference between hunters in a grove. So he's pretty impressed that I actually grown to be much stronger than before. Though I myself know that he can sense it. I just decided to be quiet about it, not wanting to show it that much. But I deep down wanted indeed for him to realize that I've grown stronger, and I was not the weak boy that he knew back in the day. I was someone different, someone much stronger. Aside, and eventually we walk into a dungeon, ready to face what challenges will be ahead of us, with me knowing that this will be a much more difficult dungeon. Though not physically, but mentally, just like the double dungeon was. I then sighed, eventually with Juhi and Mr. Song, we enter inside. Inside there will be multiple goblins, due to it being a D rank dungeon. But of course, we'll be moving on to a proof of the criminals, as they were easily able to deal with these D rank monsters, due to them, all of them being C rank. All of them were easily able to dispatch multiple of the monsters, easy dealing with them, with none even having to struggle. Of course, Mirsong will also would have able to defend himself, as he was high rank as well, being around C rank himself, and he was a mage, so he had much more mana than normal hunters, so he was easily able to deal with some of the goblins by easily burning them. As for me and Juhi, I was easily able to defend her. Of course, for her also being surprised that I was not as injured as I used to be. Of course, I did get injured multiple times when I faced much more higher ranking dungeons. But with my strength actually being stronger than before, I was not as injured as Juno was in the original timeline. So I was still able to able to survive much longer. Without even being impressed with my progress, but also asking me curiously of what I actually wanted to tell her after the dungeon raid was over. I told her that is something that I should have told her a long time ago, though I was hesitant to say. Of course, she was surprised and slightly blushes, and what she heard from me, and with me just remain calm with a gentle smile. Eventually, the path was split into three, with me knowing where we must go. As when utilizing my abilities in the system itself, I was able to see the real path to the boss, and eventually, both me and Mr. Song and Juhi would have went that way, when the others going to the other road. Of course, Tarshuk would smile slightly at me, with me glaring slightly at him with confusion, but I deep down know that he wants to kill me. I can tell by his intention. His bloodlust is still leaking out. Even though he's not showing it, I can feel it. Thanks to help with the system, and due to me increasing my stats so overwhelmingly, I've been able to sense bloodlust from people even though they are not showing it in person. Eventually, Tashik is able to eliminate the Colonel Hunters, with all of them being killed by him. But not only that, but also the other hunters which survive. Of course, he also is able to kill them. But eventually, I was able to sense even heard screaming. Of course, I would be surprised, but I'll be ready. And eventually, I tell both Mr. Song and Juhi to follow me as we rush into the other side of the caves, knowing that we must go instantly. Eventually, before Dashi could actually attack Juhi, I was able to block his hand, even grip it slightly, almost cracking his bones. With him shocked as he jumps back, slightly from the pain. And of course, I was able to spot the bodies behind him. My own brother runs cold. It's for the first time in my life I've seen another person kill others. It was something that I've seen before, but for someone to do it so casually and even act like it was nothing, this was something that was disturbing me. I could only act that because of the system itself, since it made me much more colder. But for a person to do that, that was mentally insanity, and I could not believe. But I know that hunters, some of them do become insane because of their overwhelming strength, so it's normal. But I'll change this. I'll try to. But of course, I also glance as I see that they were not the only one. The girls were not the only ones who were injured with being shot. As I see Mr. Kim, of course, I will see him as he was bloodied and almost near death. I'll then yell at Tree to try to heal him. But before I could even finish my sentence, Mr. Kim would have told me that he is deeply sorry and says that he should not run away. He should have stayed and maybe him being the sacrifice. Of course, I was shocked by his words and tell him to not speak too much since he will lose too much blood. But he apologizes to me, saying that he's truly sorry. I told him not to do that, since he still has a family. He still has his child to take care of. He cannot die here right now. He can't. But he tells me that it's too late, as eventually he closes his eyes with the final apology to me. With me being shocked, it's for the first time I've seen someone die apologize to me. There's something deeply hurt me inside. I never wanted a person to feel sorry for me, even to a point of their death. It was something that truly broke my heart. As I know that Mr. Tom did left me inside a double dungeon, but I do not blame him. I was supposed to be. This was something that I truly desired myself. But seeing his sadness and leaving his family like this, it just broke my heart within. And with the rage building up within me, I'll then glare at Taishik with my rage building up immensely. Of course, Mr. Song tells him to calm down, but I tell him that I'll handle Taishik myself. Of course, Song is reluctant, but I tell him that I'm more than strong enough to deal with him. I already know that my current strength is around high C rank to around low B rank. Even with my strength, it will be around high B rank to low A rank. So I'm easily able to deal with Taishik by myself. As I glare at him, clearly pissed off. And I'll then rush at him before he can ambush him Song, with him being surprised at my speed, as I was easily able to deflect Taishik's dagger, with Taishik actually being shot as he feels his hand trembling just from the pressure of our blades colliding. He's in shock, even surprised to actually see that me, a E-rank hunter was supposed to, is this strong. He's actually surprised. But he eventually tells him that it's time for him to actually reveal his true skill, with me just glaring at him, as I think to myself, then show it to me. Show me what an assassin like you, a B-rank hunter, can do against me. Someone who grows infinitely. As both of us rushed at each other, with me giving a cold glance, and I told him to bring it on. If he wants to use his skill against me, then go ahead. I'm more than prepared for him. Of course, Taishi then glitters back. It tells me that I'm pretty arrogant, but he doesn't judge, since he's also arrogant himself. Eventually, I told him that enough talk, and it's time for us to begin the battle. Of course, Taishi just smirks and with a maniacal laugh tells me that I'm indeed something, and eventually both of us clash, with Taishi sending multiple blows at me, with me blocking most of them, and eventually both of us will bounce around the cave, instantly clashing with each other as multiple sparks of light appear, with both of us clashing so fast that it was almost inconceivable to be seen, even by a human or hunter's eye. We were just being shocked by the speed both me and Tashik were doing. Our speed was beyond his senses, and he himself was actually surprised that we were actually moving even faster than even light itself. It was shocking to him. With our movements being so fast, Tashik was actually surprised that I was able to keep up with him. As we clashed multiple times, I was able to block his attacks and also try to attack him, but he was able to block it. With him trying to stab me, but I was able to grab his hand and even slightly grip it, making him stagger back and not being able to stab me in just a nick of time. Of course, he also slashes me multiple times, but I just grunt, enduring the pain. This was nothing. In comparison to a double dungeon, this was nothing but a mere scratch in comparison. But of course, my body, when it still needed to heal itself. So I also realized that the system is now acting up because of his bloodlust. And eventually I glare at him, saying that he did make the system act up. I was hoping that it didn't, but it seems like it did. I glare at him and tell him that this will be his final hour in this dungeon for the rest of his life. And I activated my skill speed, instantly amplifying my speed by 30%, instantly disappearing and eventually bring a devastating blow into Taishik, able to blow his daggers back with him being shot. It's just a mere block that he did will push him back just by the mere punch that I did with my dagger, shocking him by the immense power and speed that I now possessed. Eventually, I will then reappear behind him as I will slash his cheek, instantly activating being paralyzed and bleed effect on him. But of course, Darshik being shocked and surprised, but eventually he's able to break free due to his strength. I can already tell. It seems that I'm still really weak for a B rank hunter. Even with my current strength being around the lower A rank, it seems that the system only calculates to my current skills and with not my physical strength. Of course, I already know with my current prowess, I'll most likely stand a chance around a low B rank hunter, but my physical strength is around a low A rank. So, I'm undeterred by Dashik able to resist these effects. Even as I think to myself that he's really stubborn, but I already know that sooner or later, after I became stronger, he'll be nothing but a pest in my sight. So I'll just think to myself, I need to get stronger, and I tell him that he's not half bad himself. With, of course, Tashik able to utilize his assassin skill, camouflage, instantly disappearing. It able to damage me slightly, but I'll just remain calm and tell him that he's indeed talking too much. And eventually I will be able to use one of my status recovery, since I have plenty of them, around 8, and I already use just this one. So I have 7 saved up, so I don't have to worry much, though I know that I can only use 1 or around 2 once per day. So it was still beneficial for me nonetheless. Eventually, I'll then get to the battle, with of course Dashi actually being surprised that I was able to heal myself instantly, with all my injuries disappearing, shocking him. Of course, he even barely dodges a slash from me, as my fatigue has gone to 0, meaning that I can now continue to fight at full strength once again, while he is now injured and losing strength due to bleed, being effective slightly at him. But of course, he tries to utilize his camouflage skill and attack me, but I can already detect his bloodlust. And due to my sense skill being incredibly high, standing at around 82 points, I can already sense him due to his bloodlust. And even without it, I can already see him through a camouflage slightly, so not to worry much, as I block each of his attacks, with actually being shocked, and eventually I decided to end it all, as I activate the skill Bloodlust. And eventually Tashik is shocked as he sees a gigantic figure in front of him, as he's being shocked, and it stands a gigantic figure with glowing eyes, glaring directly at Tashik's soul, as it's seemingly being death itself. Before Tashik can actually react, I stab him in the chest, shocking him as he's caught off guard, bleeding as now the, the skills of bleed and of course paralyze being activated on him due to him being weakened. Of course, he also asked me of who I am, with me just glaring sadly at him and saying that I am Sun Jinwoo, a D-rank hunter who grows through every battle. Eventually, I was able to complete the urgent quest, with me just sighing, as this is another time that I've killed a human, as I feel like my emotions are being suppressed a little bit, though due to me being a reincarnated soul, I'm able to still maintain them, though not by bit. It's not like they're disappearing, but they're being suppressed slightly, though it's not a big of a deal for me, since I don't even have to even feel emotions when I deal with bastards like him. But at least I can still feel other things like comfort and love. That is what I need most. I would then sigh as I think to myself that I indeed became stronger, able to take down a B rank hunter, meaning that already with my current strength, I'm most likely to be around the B rank level. I also glanced at the rune stone I was able to get from him after killing him. Being the rune stone of camouflage, I would think to myself that that's a really good skill to have, and I'll have to actually thank Taishe, since at least he was useful for one thing, except for his miserable life. I'll of course crush the stone and eventually get the skill of camouflage, smiling silently in my mind as I think to myself this skill will be very beneficial in the future. Eventually we will exit his dungeon. Eventually we'll be spotted by General, one of the association hunters, which works with the chairman. Of course he then asks us what happened to Taishik. Of course, Mr. Song then lies about him able to take him down on site with the help of Juhi. With me, I should be a surprise. But he tells me that it's no problem. With me, not. And eventually, after we walk our own ways, eventually Mr. Chincho would eventually told me about Huandong Su, the older brother of the one I killed. With him explain that sooner or later he will show up, and he tells him to be ready. Of course, I will then glance at my status window. With my current strength, I am most likely able to take a B rank hunter, and possibly maybe even match slightly an A rank hunter with my current stats. But I deep down know my stats in comparison to an S rank which got his skill boosted around 20-30% based on another hunter will most likely be not enough. I must become at least a national rank hunter, or at least an S rank. That would at least give me enough strength. I must achieve a job of necromancer sooner or later. If not, everything will go to waste. And I also glance at my skills. With me smiling as I have bloodlust, alongside the equipped item Warden's Necklace, which gives me an additional boost to my sense and agility, which I'm glad, since this is more than enough for me. Of course, around the night time, both me and Juhi would eventually walk together, with her asking me if I would tell her what I had in mind, with her gently smiling at me. I'll smile slightly and tell her that, yeah, I do have something for her. And I tell her that I actually want to confess something to her. Of course, she asked me that to speak my heart out. And I told her that I actually like her and I want her to be my girlfriend. Of course, she is surprised slightly but accepts it. But I also tell her that maybe I'll have multiple lovers, so if she's fine if she can share me. Of course, Joey thinks for a moment and eventually tells me that she is fine with it, with me actually being surprised. So she's actually fine with sharing me. Julia, of course, tells me that I've grown stronger and there will be no doubt that I'll have multiple lovers in the future. So she's happy that at least I'll be with her. I smile gently and thank her with her understanding. Of course, we eventually go our separate ways, with Juhi eventually waving me goodbye, and of course kissing my cheek, eventually waving goodbye as he goes home. I smile gently as I think to myself that, well, that's one down and two more to go, I guess. Well, more than one, but I guess I'll just see. I think to myself that having multiple lovers would definitely be difficult, but I'm not against it. As long as they're happy, that's all I care about. But I know that I'll have to deal with much more powerful threats, and I know this will be just the beginning. But with my strength currently, at least I'll be able to deal with other hunters which are around C or B rank. At least this will give me comfort, at least for now. As I go home, I think to myself, once I become even stronger, I'll be able to face you myself, Igorus. As my eyes go blue slightly as I go back to my apartment and meet with Jinha, with her asking if my raid went well, with me nodding as I go to my room. Went to sleep as I get prepared for the morning when me and Jinho will go inside a dungeon. But this is the end for this part. Hope you guys enjoy this. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cosmic Gojiro out.